Underwood has a question.
Mr. Fincham, in real time and space, looking at this change, what does it really mean in terms of car spaces based on?
The size of the space does not change. That's
Right.
specified in the ordinance. In a Chesapeake Bay preservation area, which this property is, the parking space requirement is 9 by 18.
So in terms of capacity,
The capacity on this site related to the large retail establishment, I believe, results in about 645 spaces.
okay.
And under the current ordinance, that requirement is close to 740.
Okay. Thank you.
Other board members have questions?
Yes, I just had one question on the planning commission vote. The dissenting vote there, can you give me just kind of curious what the reason for that was?
I think it was a concern about the parking needs for the project in question and really related to the size of the commercial development and whether we might need more parking than this ordinance would require.
I'm just kind of curious, when you make a decision on stuff like this, when developers, I don't know any of this, when a developer comes in and says we need X amount of spaces, at least X amount of spaces, do they base that on the busiest day of the year? Do they base it on, how do they determine, besides square footage or whatever, do they say, hey, look, on this particular day, the busiest day, whether it's Black Friday or whatever the case may be?
Historically, that's how regulations were developed. It was based on the busiest day of the year. I think in this case, and I don't know that we have a representative from Walmart here or not, this is based, from my discussions with Blackwood, on typically what they see for this size project in terms of parking needs. So it's based on historical data related to other projects that they've developed.
And I guess, is this the same as it is like up in, say, the Spotsylvania or Fredericksburg? Is it the same? Are we adopting something that's very similar to what the Walmart in Spotsylvania has, the Walmart in Fredericksburg has, Central Park?
We looked at Colonial Heights as well as several other ordinances. I did not look at Spotsy's, but typically we have seen a reduction in the parking requirements for large retail centers.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Fincham, just with regards to what we have here in front of us in our report, it says that they had, I just lost it of course, 793 spaces would be required under the current ordinance.
Okay.
And they're going to get 645 if we adopt this change.
Yes, sir.
My question is, they had the actual land area to have 793 spaces, didn't they? Because it was fairly large.
With a modification to the concept plan, there is sufficient land.
Okay.
Without modification to their GDP, they would not have enough land to provide 793 spaces. The GDP is based upon the 1 per
Right.
200.
But they would have to modify
1 per 250, I'm sorry.
They would have to modify their concept plan.
Yes, sir.
To comply with the actual 793 numbers.
With the current ordinance, yes, sir.
Okay. But they actually have the physical space to do it. So what I'm looking for is, in this particular case, we're saying we understand you have the space to do it, but because you are, or you have developed a concept plan that staff has looked at and they think it's okay, we are going to make this change to allow you less spaces, basically.
To develop the GDP
Right.
as they have proposed, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? The only thing I would add is, it seems to me that 645 spaces would be a significant number unless they're going to be doing outrageous business. I would think that 645, I can't think of a place around here that has 645 spaces, to be honest. So, yeah, but they got 1,200 children, and they all drive new cars. Okay, how does the board wish to address this text amendment? Motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve text amendment 06, 2015.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved in proper second that we would approve text amendment 06, 2015 as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Akers abstained, so it is 5 with 1 abstention. That takes us to agenda item number 5, an ordinance to amend Chapter 77, Property Maintenance of the Code of Caroline County by adding Article 9, Existing Building Maintenance Code. The purpose of this amendment is to adopt Section 103.4, Part 3 of the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code to inspect residential renting dwellings units for compliance with the code and to promote safe, decent, and sanitary housing for its citizens. The ordinance establishes the Carmel Church Residential Rental Inspection District and regulations governing the inspection and maintenance of existing residential rental dwelling units, including all our use groups as defined by the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code. Mr. Fincher.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, this item was previously brought to the board's attention, and a fairly voluminous staff report was provided to the board at that time, outlining issues related to certain motels in the Carmel Church area. The board authorized staff to go forward and prepare the actual ordinance, which you have in front of you. And after much modification and discussion between staff and the county attorney, I think we've got the ordinance that we thought we were working on. You also have the proposed boundaries of the Carmel Church Residential Rental Inspection District. You have a map which identifies those boundaries. As we promised the board, we have crafted that ordinance as narrowly as we can to address the issues that were raised previously with the Board of Supervisors. Both Mr. Whiteman and I are here. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer those for you.
Board members have questions before the opening of the public hearing? If not, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Akers.
If the board passes this ordinance tonight, it becomes effective today or tomorrow?
It becomes effective immediately. We still come back to the board at your next meeting because we have to appoint a property maintenance administrator, or at least an interim property maintenance administrator. Mr. Whiteman, Mr. Culley, and I have discussed that, but we need to finalize that recommendation and bring that back to the board.
Because this company is now, they're advertising all over the county.
Yes, sir.
And on that note,
Yes,
can we visit a way of actually removing those signs
Yes.
as litter?
That's another thing
They
too.
are everywhere. I mean, I
They're-
drove on the
they're-
west side of the county. I couldn't believe every corner had.
Yes.
Jeff and I were just discussing which one of us was going to go first to talk about the signs, and Mr. Akers stole it, but they are on the ramp on 95. I saw them today.
They're all over Ladysmith.
So,
All over Ladysmith.
I will talk to Mr. Nelson about, in looking at them, they're all within the right-of-way, which is covered by VDOT. I will talk to Mr. Nelson. I am aware that VDOT will allow localities to actually address those sign issues on their behalf. I would want to talk to Mr. Nelson and then come back to the board to discuss how you might want to proceed with that. But we
Wouldn't,
I will talk to Mr. Nelson about getting those cleaned up.
well, if VDOT allows the county to take care of it, wouldn't this be under our normal property maintenance and all the time and materials accrued by him would be billed to the applicant or the actual offender?
VDOT has a specific program.
No. Ask VDOT for county permission to remove the sign.
Yes, sir.
That's all you have to do. Okay. Then it becomes a county property maintenance issue like we normally have, so we could then be able to bill him for taking those signs down. Work with me.
And,
I think that's-
I don't know that that's true. It sounds good, Mr. Thomas, but I don't know how legal it is.
I think whether the county's gonna move the signs anyhow. Whether we get reimbursement from him or not is irrelevant. The point that we're making a statement to him, one is, this is a possibility that you could have paid $500 for us to pull up your signs, but we're gonna be serious about cleaning it up.
But I don't know if we have an ordinance in place that allows us to charge to take up signs. Now, it is not on his property, so it's not property maintenance for him, it is property maintenance for the people that he has signs on.
But no, they're in the right of way, so it's VDOT.
Well, I understand, but VDOT doesn't charge to take signs up. They'll take you to court.
Well,
but they
maybe we
don't-
should ask them to
they don't
do that.
charge you to take them up.
And the only thing
I'm not sure we have thought
that concerns me, and certainly I don't have the signs need to go. I understand that. I just wouldn't want him to bill the county, since it's not, because my understanding is, I don't know that the county has the authority to remove his signs.
Major Mosier, I have a question, Mr. Taylor, because if that sign were to blow into the road, is that considered trash?
Oh, so now we're gonna say they all blew in the road?
Literally.
If it blows into the road, is it trash? Is it littering?
It would not be littering if, it's improperly placed if it's in the VDOT right-of-way. VDOT has regulations on there, they enforce that, and VDOT normally will take those signs up. If it goes onto the person's property, it could be a combination of trespassing as well as,
Okay.
illegally putting the...
Don't think VDOT's not charging the county for that.
Major Mosier, could you call VDOT tomorrow on that?
Sure.
'Cause all you need to do is be at the intersection, of Ladysmith and Route 1, and it's definitely in there right away. I mean, there's just no doubt about it.
They're on the
So-
interstate.
Yeah, so could you
They're
call
on the interstate.
VDOT tomorrow and say, look, this is.
Absolutely.
I saw one
Yes.
today.
And it just looks like garbage.
I would
And
definitely call.
certainly, I just don't want the county to overstep its bounds. If the county does not have legal right to remove the sign, then the person could come back on the county for doing that. And I'm not an attorney, so I don't know that, but it just, if it's in the right of way, I would think it would be up to the state to move it, not the county.
Are they considered the same as, for instance, campaign signs?
Yeah.
So I cannot go and pull them up. If somebody sees me pull them up.
No, there's a different statute for the campaign signs.
So a different fine I
Yeah,
would
but
be incurring, right?
Yeah.
But, Mr. Chairman,
You might fall under the
again,
Washington statute.
I mean, my intensity and desire to have these signs is obvious because it's in the district that I represent. But the reality is, this is an unauthorized business. The county has already said you don't have permission to have that type of hotel suite.
Right.
And yet they're advertising? I mean, if we let this happen, think of what people would advertise.
What bothers me is the fact that if we have
That's illegal.
if that is illegal, what they are doing,
Their
but
business
still
is
we're
illegal.
having to pass a new ordinance that addresses it so we can even be tougher on them. Why aren't we enforcing the ordinance that, if we have one, that deals with the fact that they aren't allowed to have what they have in place? Kitchenettes, I think, is one of the things that we talked about, that they did not have authority to do those things.
That's correct. And
Well, do
But
they
they
have
advertise.
kitchenettes?
the kitchenettes that we were aware of were removed the last time we went through and had to inspect those facilities.
When was that?
Year ago?
Right before they put them back.
That was when this new management company bought this motel.
A
and
year
they-
ago?
Yes, sir, about 13 months ago, and they converted 8 rooms. Move over. They converted 8 rooms illegally with new electrical conductors, So we went in, placarded them, shut them down, and made them return. Now, from my visit a month and a half ago, what I've seen is a lot of cooktops, cord and plug, although I can't get in there yet. So we don't need to rewrite the ordinance. This one will get me in those rooms, and then all that can start getting out.
So we don't have the authority to go in there now to see if they have kitchenettes and they are not abiding by?
No, sir,
what-
not,
Okay.
only on a complaint basis. This will allow us to then do 10%. Once we find them, we can expand the inspections.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, if board members are satisfied, we can go ahead with the public hearing at this time. All right, I will open the public hearing for ordinance amended, Chapter 77, property maintenance of the Code of Caroline County. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this ordinance? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this ordinance? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this ordinance? Seeing no one with the desire to speak, I will now close the public hearing and ask the board to address this issue with a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion to adopt the amended ordinance for, or amended Chapter 77 of the property maintenance ordinance.
Is there a second? It's been moved and properly second that we would adopt the ordinance to amend Chapter 77.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can I ask that you make one amendment to 77-34?
Yes, okay.
And line 4 at the end of the Board of Supervisors, put a period there and strike the rest of that sentence. 77-34, administration. Second sentence, such regulation shall be in writing. Put a period after Board of Supervisors, and then just strike prior to entry.
Okay.
Okay,
I amend my motion to that effect.
okay. Do you mean a second?
Yes.
Okay, so it has been moved and properly second that we would adopt the ordinance.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can I just ask a question before?
okay, yes, sir.
I just want to make sure on this, Mr. Parton, we are going to discuss that part of this next meeting, the administration of this? Yes. Okay.
Okay? All right, it's been moved and properly second that we would approve the ordinance amendment as presented with the addition spoken to by Mr. Fincher. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. That takes us to agenda item 6, text amendment 05-2015. An ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Caroline County by amending Article 2, Section 2, definition to amend the definition of rural recreational commercial use. The purpose of this amendment is to allow temporary overnight lodging dormitory to house attendees of various sports camps. Okay, Mr. Fincher.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, this proposed amendment was forwarded to the board by the Planning Commission with a recommendation of approval. This was discussed with the board at a first reading, and the board authorized the preparation of the public hearing for this request. The proposed amendment would add language in the definitions for rural commercial recreational uses to allow temporary overnight lodging, dormitory type facilities with a special exception permit or as part of the special exception permit for these types of uses, with the idea that teams, kids, etc., coming to tournaments, training at these types of facilities would have a facility on premises that they could stay together for the use of these facilities. This would, rural commercial recreational uses are by special exception permit, so this would not automatically go into effect to become a by right use In the case of an existing facility, it would require an amendment to their special exception permit to include this type of facility. So it's not automatically allowed.
Okay. Board members have questions for Mr. Fincham prior to opening the public hearing? If not, we will open the public hearing for text amendment 05-2015, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Caroline County by amending Article 2, Section 2, definitions to amend the definition of rural recreation commercial use. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this text amendment? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jim Radvani. I own the Virginia Sports Complex, and this amendment pertains, I think, to the complex, which is one of the uses that would benefit by this. I wanted to come because, in case you had any questions, I'm here to answer any questions. I've been running the complex now, I guess, about 4 years, and we've struggled a bit, and it's not really about the money, it's more about giving back to the community a bit, and what we found is travel baseball is getting awfully expensive. The play's expensive, the gear's expensive, to stay is expensive. And it's really becoming a sport for the elite, and as you saw in my brochure that I gave you, we started a foundation, the You Deserve a Chance Foundation, which could help the underprivileged be able to afford to play baseball. The new commissioner of Major League Baseball is pretty concerned that the sport's, it's losing some interest, and we have to keep a lot of interest in the game, and if people can't afford to play, then how can they be interested? So our goal would be to provide some housing on the complex, bunkhouses. I mean, we have a big mess hall there, we have showers there, we have a lot of great things there already, so that kids could come in, stay, have a clinic, have a camp. If an underprivileged person can't afford to play, how are they going to afford to stay in a hotel? They cannot. If we could bus in 50 kids, have a nice clinic, Major League players, give back. I think the world is into give back nowadays, and there's a lot of people interested. The Nike Foundation, the RBI program, which is the revitalizing baseball in the inner cities, that they want to give back, but we need to have a vehicle to be able to do that, and some housing would be able to have kids stay there and really truly experience a great experience for a week, let alone be local kids could come. But if you're, we're very situated in an area that is close to a lot of inner cities. And you can get a bus and come from New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, or wherever it may be, and come to Virginia. It's not like Florida where you must fly. A lot of people could get here, but if you have to stay in a hotel, how are you going to experience you're not going to be able to. So we're really trying to give back. Our foundation is doing great things, and we'd like to have an opportunity to do that. The great thing, if you did pass this, my special permit is guided by you, so we could come back, put any requirements you would have in the special permit, and clearly the one that, I totally agree with would be a sewer connection would be required immediately to build any housing. So that would be immediate sewer. That's, you're going to need that. I'd work with the county to make sure the line is sized right so we could have any connections along Route 1, and I think it'd be a win-win for everybody. I actually want VSC to be a special place. It's a great complex, but it's a destination complex. It's not the demographics here in the area, it's a little tough, and a lot of people can't afford to play. It's when I charge a $5 gate here, people, in New Jersey, you charge a $5 gate, people don't say a word. Here, it's tough on people. When fees are $500, in New Jersey, we charge $900. So I need to be able to bring in some vehicles to raise monies, give back, and be able to really do things here maybe you can't do in New Jersey, and we're committed to do that, and I think the housing can only help us do that. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer any questions at all. I don't know if that you do that, and this is my first public comment, so you feel free to ask any questions you may have.
What we normally do is to give if there are other persons who would like to comment, and then when we close the public hearing, we will ask questions at that time, okay?
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, just one, so you're saying, though, that you would do an immediate sewer connection prior to this?
To be able to have the housing. So if my housing was approved, then I wouldn't, I think I have 2 years to do my sewer connection. we would amend the permit to say, if you want housing, you must do sewer before the housing, which would then make it quicker, which would be great. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this text amendment? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this text amendment? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this text amendment? Seeing no one with the desire to speak, I'll declare this public hearing closed. Board members have questions? Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Fincham, could you help me, please? Based on what we're doing now, we're changing the text amendment and the definition.
Yes, sir.
What Mr. Radvani just said was his special exception would be renewed to include the language, the sewer must be completed first. Right, or did I misunderstand that?
I think that's what he's saying, yes, sir.
Okay.
As part of an amendment to his special exception permit, the board can condition the dormitory on the extension of public sewer to serve the premises.
But that's not something we normally do on a special exception permit. We don't normally say in the middle of that process, oh, by the way, you have to connect to sewer. You know. Now,
Well,
he's
you
saying-
actually have a condition now that requires them to connect to sewer within the next couple of years.
Right.
In theory, the way this could work, he seeks an amendment to his special exception permit. You can amend the time frame for that sewer connection.
But if he doesn't, I've changed the definition, and what happens?
He still has to apply for a special exception permit to get the dorm because it was not included in the original permit.
Okay, that's the key point. So the original special exception says nothing about dorms.
That is correct.
So when we make this text amendment, which has nothing to do with his application, because it's our ordinances we're changing via text amendment.
Yes, sir.
Then he has to apply for a special exception, modification, change, whatever we want to call it, to do the dorms, at which time we will address the sewer.
Unless you want to include the sewer requirement as a line in the definition.
But then I'm saying, in that case, I'm saying any indoor, outdoor activity that has lodging should have to have sewer? But I don't necessarily want to say that for everything, because suppose the Redskins want to open up a training facility at Caroline High School.
I hope they'll do that.
And they wouldn't necessarily have sewer there already, but then when they want people to stay overnight, then we would ask them to have sewer. No, I'm just saying, do we want to make in the definition of something a requirement particular to somebody else? That's all I'm saying.
If it's going to be, to me, if it's going to be a fee-supported activity with temporary overnight lodging,
I'm just saying.
I mean, I would think that you would have to have, I think you would want to have sewer.
My understanding is this was what he agreed to. This is particular to his particular situation. Is it, I mean, is this not his condition?
It's not a condition yet,
Okay.
Mr. Taylor. I would suggest to you that staff would not come to the board without some recommendation addressing the sewer, which to date has not been addressed at the site.
Okay. Okay.
One last thing, if I may, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
Mr. Thomas?
One promise, last thing. Mr. Fincham, by us making this change, we're saying every private fee-supported indoor-outdoor activity, every one of them, because that's our new definition, you know, is going to have, or that wants dormitories. If we add has to have sewer, that's for everyone. We're just making a definition change right here. So if we change it and add sewer to this, everyone that comes after this has to comply. But everyone that would come after this would have a special exception, probably.
Would have to, yes, sir.
So
Would have
we
to
would-
apply
we could
for a
address
special
those things
exception.
in the special exception. We're basically giving them an opportunity to have everybody who has that kind of activity a chance to have dorms on site. That's all this is saying. That's all we're doing.
Okay, yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Mr. Fincham,
You can have septic system.
I'm just curious, because we haven't looked at this but so much. If the definition is changed the way it is, the way it reads in the packet, does any business that wants to have such an activity have to have a special exception permit? Or is it?
The only change
is it by
to-
right anywhere?
No, it's a special exception use. So a similar type of facility, say it's a football training facility, they have football fields or soccer fields. It's a rural commercial recreational use.
But since it's not a by right use anywhere
That's correct.
for this, then it's always going to come up for a special exception.
It's always a special
And the board would
exception
always
permit.
have the opportunity to put a condition for water, sewer, whatever it wanted, operating hours, anything else on that facility. So it would have more flexibility to deal with individual situations if you left the definition the way it is. Then my other question was, because I haven't looked at their current permit, but you're certain that it would preclude them from building the dormitory without amending it?
Yes, sir. Their current conditions speak specifically to what types of facilities they can have there.
Okay, great, thanks.
So I guess my question, and you may have already answered this, how can we allow them to do what they're asking without impacting all future dormitories or issues of this nature?
Well, you can adopt the definition as is. They still have to go through the special exception process to amend their current special exception to include dormitory facilities at their site. You can condition that. So as part of the special exception process right now, you can condition that requested change to address your concerns or the issues of the extension of public sewer to the site.
And remember, the conditions aren't proffers, so the board can impose whatever conditions it wants to impose as long as they have a rational basis for doing so.
Okay. Okay, board members have additional questions? If not, how would you like to address this issue? A motion is in order?
Chairman, I'm going to move the adoption of the text amendment.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we adopt the text amendment as presented. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Mr. Thomas, how do you vote?
I voted aye.
Mr. Black?
I voted aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Nay.
Mr. Akers?
Nay.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
And I vote nay. Okay. Is there an additional motion or? That's it. Okay, that takes us to
Now you can't sell a place, you can't put dorms up.
unfinished business.
You can't sell a place, you can't put dorms up.
Continued first reading, Chapter 45 of Code of Caroline County Environmental Regulations.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, may I, before we go on to the next item, I would like to change my vote on the previous item we just had. I voted aye, and I'd like to change my vote to no, if I may. Well, I'm not asking I may. I am going to change my vote to no.
That's fine.
As per parliamentary procedure.
That's fine. You can change your vote.
That's sufficient. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Continued first reading of Chapter 45 of the Code of Caroline County Environmental Regulations.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, several months ago, I believe it was August, we first brought this forward to the board for first reading. As I advised at that time, the Department of Conservation and Recreation reviewed our flood hazard regulations, which are currently contained in the zoning ordinance, pursuant to the board's adoption of the current flood maps, which was, I believe was done in 2009. They have determined that there are modifications that were required of our current floodplain regulations. At the time this was first brought to the board, Department of Conservation and Recreation was still reviewing our draft of their model ordinance. They have completed that review, shall we say, beat us into submission. We're basically adopting pretty much what they have outlined as their model ordinance, with a few, I guess, what they would deem insignificant changes. Anyway, we've completed our review process with DCR, and this is the ordinance that they have found to be consistent with federal and state regulations for flood hazard management. And we are bringing this back to the board now that they have reviewed it and blessed it for a continued first reading to see whether the board wants to go forward and hold a public hearing or whether you want some additional time to look at this. We are proposing as part of this that we take the flood regulations out of the zoning ordinance, put it in the county code with our erosion and sediment control regulations. If and when we ever adopt stormwater regulations, they would be part of this chapter as well.
Okay. Board members have questions for Mr. Fincham? All right.
Mr.
Feely.
Fincham, I looked at this in the past, and what I'd really like to see are change bars on what's really different, because I couldn't decide what I'd read before and what was new.
Okay.
Is it all new?
From our current ordinance, I wouldn't say it's all new, but it's been significantly switched around. But I think we can come up with something that identifies most of those changes for you.
Because it's difficult to read from memory what we talked about and then what was different, and I just gave up at some point because it all looked the same.
Yeah, we kind of gave up too.
I mean, I understand.
I understand.
It's hard to discern what's really changed and what stayed the same, because if it's all different, it probably really doesn't matter. But if it's interspersed with things that really didn't change, then
We can come up with a black line version for you that I think tries to identify the changes between the old regs and the new regs, as well as what we tried to do. I mean, this ordinance is not written from a local government perspective. It's written from a federal and state perspective down to local government.
and sometimes it's hard to articulate to somebody what the change is when you don't know what it was.
Yes, sir.
And how that impacts us.
Yes, sir.
So a lined copy would be fabulous.
We will try to construct or reconstruct
I
that for you.
understand. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Other questions? Would the board like to continue the first reading or go to the public hearing?
I'd like to continue it just to see the lined version.
Okay,
Can we go to January?
Sure.
Okay.
all right. We'll go to January. Thank you, sir. Okay, that takes us to agenda item 8, proposed emergency ordinance amending Article 3 of Chapter 21 of the Code of Caroline County prohibiting the keeping of dangerous, wild, exotic, or vicious animals. I know that there are several people here who want to speak to this, and whereas we normally don't do that, but tonight I'm going to allow you to speak. I would like that you limit it. I just think it's a couple. How many people want to speak? Just raise your hand so I can. Okay. If you could limit it to hopefully 5 minutes. I do want to give you an opportunity to do that, but I want to try to keep a little sense of control here as well. So, Mr. Fincham, would you just give a little brief overview of, oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, as requested at the last meeting when this was discussed, Mr. Emerson has prepared an ordinance amendment that adds the primates that Dr. Hayes referred to during the last discussion to the list of exempted animals. And that ordinance is option 1 in your packet. We do have some concern, and I know the Sheriff's Office shares this concern about putting the ordinance together so quickly within 12 days of the last discussion, and whether we're doing a thorough job there and ending up with a good product. So as a result of that, we have suggested a second ordinance that you could consider as well that would simply, it doesn't change the exemptions, but it does extend the time frame to remove the animal, if that is the case, from the current 30 days, I believe it is, to 45 days with the option for an additional 30 days with the board's approval. And if you do want to give more thorough thought to possible changes, that would extend the time period that we're talking about here that Dr. Hayes would have if, and I do say if, ultimately you didn't end up amending the ordinance to increase the exemptions. So that is option 2 in your board packet as well for consideration.
Okay. Dr. Hayes, I believe you had asked for an opportunity to speak, and I know the major and the gentleman in the back. So, Dr. Hayes, if you would come forward at this time, if you would like to address the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members, for the opportunity to speak again. I'll try to keep it brief. Basically, I'm going to reinforce what I talked about on November 12th. I'm the owner of 6 primates. They're all small primates. And basically, they meet the criteria for exemption criteria. They're not going to be a threat to the ecology of Virginia because they can't live out in the cold environment. They won't threaten the wildlife here in Virginia because they're herbivores. So they're not going to destroy any of the animals there, and they won't reproduce. Also, they no threat to people. I mean, my animals basically have never escaped, never bitten anyone, never gotten loose. So the likelihood of them getting loose in Virginia is slim to nothing. And also the care of them is no different than taking care of a dog and a cat. My animals been with me basically ever since they was born. They basically only know me and nobody else. They can't go and live in the zoo. They can't group house because they haven't been raised group house, so they would not be able to survive in that type of environment. So I hope that y'all will be willing to accept the amendment to allow the small primates to be kept in Caroline County. Thank you for the opportunity, and if you have any questions, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Okay. All right. Major.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, certainly thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter where it may not be normal. We know how important it is to this board to make an informed decision, and we have noted several objections to the ordinance to be amended, as county staff has met with our staff and done a tremendous job relaying our position on this issue, which you have before you. But we also invited the director of the United States Humane Society, who is the other gentleman that raised his hand to speak,